I started working when most kids were still arguing with their parents about curfews. 15. That's how old I was when I learned the value of $1. Not because my parents taught me financial responsibility, but because they simply didn't care. They had my younger brother to spoil, to dote on, to build their entire universe around. Me? I was more like the family Roomba. If I was in the room, it meant there were dishes to do, floors to mop, or trash to drag out at midnight in the rain. My first job was at Tony's Pizza Palace, a cramped, perpetually greasy shop 2 blocks from our rusted-out house in Dayton, Ohio. I worked the register at first, but by week 2, I was the only one willing to mop the bathroom floor at closing, so guess what I became? That kid. The do-it-all kid. From Tony's, I bounced to the gas station on Route 9, then a hardware store, and eventually started doing grocery deliveries for the elderly couple down the street. I didn't complain. I actually liked it. Not the grind, but the independence. Every dollar was mine. And every hour I wasn't home was a small victory. Home. Yeah. If you could call it that. There was my mom, who always said things like, "We're not running a hotel, Darren," as she slammed my bedroom door when I was 5 minutes late from work. There was my dad, usually glued to the couch, asking why I was always tired if I only worked part-time. And then there was Ethan, the golden boy. My younger brother by 3 years. Ethan never worked a day in his life. Why would he? Mom made his bed. Dad washed his car. Me, did his homework sometimes. When I complained, it was the same line every time. "You live in this house rent-free, so you don't get to talk back." Rent-free my ass. I was basically the unpaid housekeeper. Ethan would leave dishes all over the house, half-empty soda cans, chip bags, moldy plates of food in the sink, and if I didn't clean it, guess who got screamed at? Not him. Never him. You know what made it worse? Every time he got a C+ on a test or remembered to take the garbage out once a month, there were cheers. Literal cheers. Like he'd split the atom. Meanwhile, when I got Employee of the Month at Tony's after pulling doubles for 3 weeks straight, Mom just said, "Well, maybe if you worked that hard at school, you wouldn't be stuck at a pizza shop." I wasn't stuck. I was strategizing. Every tip I made, every shift I picked up, went into a tiny savings account with my name on it. I didn't tell anyone about it, not because I was being secretive, but because deep down, I knew if my parents found out, they'd find a way to make it Ethan's emergency fund. So I kept my mouth shut and worked. I'd get up at 5 a.m. for morning shifts, go to school at 8, do homework on my breaks, and then head back out for night deliveries. I barely had time to breathe, let alone complain. My classmates joked that I had a time machine because I was everywhere. One day I'd be stocking shelves at the local market, the next I'd be helping old Mrs. Navarro install a window AC unit. But I liked it. The work. The autonomy. The belief that if I just kept my head down and kept going, I could build something better. And I had dreams. Big ones. I didn't want to be rich. I wanted peace. I wanted a front porch with no yelling. A fridge with my own groceries. A living room that didn't smell like Ethan's socks. I wanted a place where I could lock the door, and no one would barge in demanding I clean the toilet. Because Ethan clogged it again. Yeah, I wanted a house. My house. Not theirs. But that dream was miles away. First, I had to survive high school. Then college. Then life. Still, every burn hand from Tony's oven, every missed party, every hour of overtime, it all went into a plan. And the first brick was laid the day I opened that savings account. That's when I made a silent promise to myself. I will never take a cent from them. Not one. Because the moment you do, they own you. And I've been owned enough. By the time I graduated high school, I had $6,402. 33 in my savings account, and a pair of shoes that were mostly held together with duct tape and silent prayers. But that money? That was my ladder out. College was always the dream, but not the kind my parents liked to talk about. You know, the grand. Ethan will go to UCLA and study law because he once watched an episode of Suits. type of dream. Nah. I was aiming for something smaller, practical. Something I could actually afford. I enrolled at a local community college with a strong programming certificate track. They had a no-frills program. 2 years, 5 days a week, get in, get the skills, get out. While Ethan was busy debating which Xbox to beg for next, I was researching Python, JavaScript, and SQL. He was waking up at noon and skipping class. I was juggling data structures and food deliveries. Guess who still got more praise at home? Ethan helped clean out the garage today. Mom gushed once, like it was Nobel Prize worthy. Meanwhile, I had a 4.0 GPA, was on the dean's list, and working 2 jobs, delivering pizzas during the day and stocking shelves at night. I once pulled a 19-hour shift between work and classes and still had to explain why I didn't answer Ethan's text asking me to pick up snacks. I wasn't just building a future, I was building myself. Brick by brick. College was where I first met real people, my people. One of my professors, Professor Lang, saw something in me early on. "You've got that edge," he said once. "Like someone who's been working since the womb." I didn't know if it was a compliment, or just a funny observation, but I'll take what I can get. Then there was Felix, my lab partner turned best friend. He was loud, loved gaming, and somehow survived entirely off vending machine burritos. But he was loyal. The kind of friend who'd help debug your code at 2 a.m., and also break into your apartment to feed your cat when you passed out at work. We started talking about startups, software development, and one day, owning our own business. And me? I started to believe it might actually happen. Back at home, though, nothing had changed. I was still the help. Ethan had dropped out of college to take time for mental clarity, which was code for to play video games and vape full-time. My parents didn't just let it slide, they applauded it. "He's being responsible," my dad said with a straight face. "Not rushing into things." Meanwhile, they were furious that I wasn't giving Ethan money. "You're his big brother," Mom said one night over dinner, slamming a casserole dish in front of me like a judge laying down a sentence. "He looks up to you. Why can't you help him with tuition?" "I didn't have help with tuition," I said. "I work 50 hours a week and sleep 4 hours a night." "And?" "That's your choice," my dad snapped. "We didn't ask you to work that much." "Right. They also didn't ask me to be born. But here we are." Ethan didn't ask. He just assumed. He'd send me half-hearted texts. "Yo, can you send 2K for classes? T-checks, bro." Not even a "please." No punctuation. Like I was an ATM that sometimes needed a reminder to spit out 20s. I didn't answer. Not because I didn't have the money, I did barely, but because I didn't want to be a doormat anymore. I was building something. Slowly, painfully, brick by brick. I had a goal, to be self-sufficient. To make something that couldn't be taken away. And no way was I going to toss those bricks into Ethan's bottomless pit of entitlement just because our parents still believed he was the second coming of Steve Jobs. I started keeping more distance. Less small talk, fewer dinners at home. I knew what would happen if they found out I was saving again. I didn't want to hear my dad say, "So you think you're better than us now?" No. I didn't think I was better. I just wanted a shot. My own shot. And I was going to take it. I was 20 when I made the decision that changed everything. I was going to build something of my own. The idea came to me while eating week-old leftovers in a cramped break room with Felix. We were both neck-deep in finals, sleep-deprived, and half-lucid. He was complaining about a company that charged a fortune for simple back-end tools, and I joked. "We could build a better system in our sleep." He stopped chewing, stared at me, and said, "Why don't we?" 3 months later, we had a working prototype. It wasn't flashy, just a streamlined automation tool for small businesses to handle scheduling, invoicing, and basic CRM. But it worked. And it solved problems. Felix handled the interface. I wrote the code. Nights became a blur of cold coffee, bug fixes, and staying just one step ahead of collapse. By day, we were still juggling jobs. By night, We were laying the foundation of our future. We called it Stack Swift. We pitched it to a few small local businesses, auto shops, bakeries, landscaping crews. They didn't need bells and whistles. They needed reliable software, and that's exactly what we gave them. No frills. No upcharges. Just something that worked. Clients started rolling in. That's when the calls from home started getting louder. It started with little jabs. Haven't seen you around much. Your brother's still trying to figure out his future. Maybe you could mentor him? Ethan's thinking of going back to college. We told him you'd help. Help? I nearly choked when I read the message from my mom. It wasn't a request. It was an expectation. Apparently, since I'd figured out how to eat, breathe, code, and pay rent without crawling back to them, I was now responsible for launching Ethan's third attempt at finding himself. He wanted to study film this time. Or maybe marketing. Or maybe become a streamer. He wasn't sure yet. My parents had decided that I should fund it. I called my mom. Let me get this straight, I said, keeping my voice calm despite every muscle in my jaw locking up. You want me to give Ethan, who doesn't work, doesn't study, doesn't do anything, money that I earned, to send him to school again? There was a pause, then the golden line. He's your brother, Darren. You should want to help him. Right. The same brother who once pawned my guitar to buy concert tickets. The same one who, when I told him I had finally passed calculus, responded with, "Cool. I just beat Elden Ring." So I laid it out. "No," I said. "Not again. Not this time." Mom gasped like I'd announced I was changing my last name. "We raised you to care about family," she snapped. I couldn't help but laugh. "You raised me to serve family. There's a difference." Click. That was the first time I really felt the line being drawn. Before, I'd always straddled the space between resentment and obligation, hoping maybe, just maybe, things would balance out if I worked hard enough. But that call ended all of that. I wasn't their backup wallet. I wasn't the contingency plan for Ethan's failures. And I sure as hell wasn't going to finance another one of his self-discovery phases. While eating instant noodles and debugging code until 3 a.m., Felix and I kept growing Stack Swift. By the end of that year, we landed a contract with a local chain of dry cleaners. It wasn't glamorous, but it was steady, reliable, and most importantly, ours. My parents didn't ask about it. They were too busy figuring out why Ethan had crashed his third used car in 6 months. I stopped offering information. I stopped explaining myself. If they wanted to believe I was cold or selfish, fine. Better that than going back to being the family doormat. Because I wasn't building this life to carry someone else's. I was building it, finally, for me. Stack Swift was finally turning into something real. By 23, Felix and I had moved into a shared office space above a laundromat that permanently smelled like lavender detergent and despair. We didn't care. It was ours. We had 5 clients on monthly retainers and 2 part-time interns, actual people, writing code with us. The company was small, scrappy, and somehow profitable. I started sleeping better. My bank account, once constantly on the brink of overdraft, now had commas. I could buy groceries without doing mental math at the register. I even started dating again. I had a life. Meanwhile, back in the family group chat, silence. Until the day I got a photo from my mom. It was Susie, our family cat since I was 13. The tabby that once used to sleep on my chest when I pulled all-nighters for homework. In the photo, she was curled up in a sunbeam, on the floor. No couch. No blanket. Just the hardwood. "Why is Susie on the floor?" I texted back. A few hours later, my dad replied. "Ethan needed money. Sold the couch. She doesn't mind." I read that sentence 3 times. Thought it was a joke. It wasn't. Ethan had started gambling. It started online, small poker games, sports bets. Then real money. Then real debt. Then the pawnshop phase. First it was his own stuff. Then the microwave. Then the living room TV. Then the couch. The actual couch. The one that Susie loved. The one we'd had since I was in middle school. Susie's couch. Gone. I felt sick. Not just because of the couch, but because it all made sense now. The reason my parents had been calling so often. The reason they were suddenly so interested in my success, again. It wasn't pride. It was desperation. Ethan wasn't spiraling. He had spiraled. He was at the bottom of the ocean, sinking into debt, and my parents were frantically trying to tie my name to a lifeboat. I didn't respond to the group chat. I just stared at the screen and scrolled up, rereading old messages. It was like a digital archive of every time I'd been dismissed, minimized, ignored. I thought about all the chances Ethan had been given. The cars. The college. The second, third, and fourth chances. I thought about how I used to walk home in the snow just to save on gas, while Ethan had Uber credit paid for by our dad's emergency credit card. Now here they were. Drowning. And somehow it was my fault for not tossing them my life vest. Felix noticed something was off the next day at work. "You look like someone kicked your cat," he said. "They sold her couch," I replied. He blinked. "What?" I told him everything. When I finished, he just said, "Bro, they will never stop trying to make you responsible for him." He was right. It was like I was the insurance policy for every time Ethan's life exploded. They didn't see me as a son. They saw me as a backup plan. A walking refund request. It hit me harder than I expected, this moment of realization. Not just because it was cruel, but because it was so normal to them. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized Ethan had been handed everything: love, support, comfort. And he used it all like it was disposable. Me? I'd been handed a mop and told, "This is your role." But that role? I'd rewritten it. At 24, I was running a company. Paying rent on a loft apartment. Taking Susie to vet checkups on my dime because I didn't trust anyone else to do it. I even bought her a new plush cat bed. She ignored it, obviously. But it was the principle. And Ethan? Ethan was trying to flip crypto to pay back his bookie. I bought the house on a Wednesday. I'd been browsing listings for almost a year, just lurking, saving posts, picturing what it would be like. I wasn't looking for anything flashy. I didn't need a pool or a game room or a walk-in closet the size of a small village. I wanted peace. Sunlight. A porch. And a front door that nobody barged through yelling about who left dishes in the sink. And then I found it. 3-bedroom fixer-upper on the edge of town, quiet neighborhood, big old oak tree in the yard. The inside needed work, some pipes replaced, paint touched up, but I saw it and thought, this is mine. I didn't even blink at the paperwork. 25 years old, signing for a mortgage solo, no co-signer. No family. Just me and a pen and a real estate agent who kept asking, "You sure your parents aren't helping with this?" Nope. Never were. Never will. When I got the keys, I did what any proud millennial does when they finally cross a life milestone. I took a picture. It was simple, me in front of the house, holding the keys in one hand and wrapping my other arm around Jenna, my girlfriend, who had brought sparkling cider and a paper sign that said, "Homeowner Energy." I uploaded the photo to Facebook with the caption, "Started with nothing but a mop, a pizza bag, and a dream. Welcome home, me." The post wasn't even up for a full hour before my phone started blowing up. First was my mom. "Wow. Nice to see you can afford things." Then my dad. "So this is what you've been doing? No heads up? No thanks for raising you?" And then, of course, Ethan. "You buy a house but can't give your own brother a couple grand to reset his life? Selfish much." That one made me laugh out loud. Reset his life? Reset from what, exactly? The traumatic experience of never hearing the word. No. Until he was 23? I didn't respond. I didn't delete their messages either. I just let them pile up like emotional spam. Then it escalated. Fast. My mom commented publicly on the photo. Not even subtly. "Must be nice to have a house while your family's falling apart. Hope the floor's not built on guilt." Okay. That one got 12 likes, including one from my aunt. Rude. Then came the group chat ambush. Apparently, I had betrayed the family. I had hoarded success. I was turning my back on the ones who raised me. Let's be clear, I had spent my childhood scrubbing bathtubs and reusing school notebooks because Ethan got the new ones. I was not raised. I was rotated between chores. Still, the sheer rage they had toward my success stunned me. It wasn't jealousy. It was entitlement. They genuinely believed that anything I earned belonged to the family. That Ethan, the walking financial landfill, deserved my money simply because he shared my blood type and once didn't bully me on a Sunday. I sat on the front steps of my new house that night, staring at the messages. I had Jenna beside me, a cat bed ready for Susie, and a garage full of paint buckets and ambition. And I thought, they're not angry that I made it. They're angry that I made it without them. And that meant I was finally free. Or so I thought. Because the next week, I got served. Like actual court papers. My parents were suing me. The charge? Deliberate sabotage of familial opportunity. Yeah. I didn't even know that was a real thing. Spoiler, it's not. But they were serious. And the reason? By refusing to help your brother, you have permanently damaged his ability to succeed. I laughed. Out loud. I laughed so hard I dropped the papers. But then I read the last page. They were accusing me of will fraud. I blinked. Will? What will? That's when I realized this wasn't about Ethan's chance. This was about something else. Something buried. Something bigger. And suddenly, things weren't funny anymore. I wasn't exactly in the mood to deal with a lawsuit from my own parents while still trying to figure out where to hang curtains and why my garbage disposal sounded like a dying blender. But life doesn't ask if it's a good time. The next morning, I sat on my kitchen floor, legal papers spread out, sipping burnt coffee and Googling. Can your parents sue you for being more successful than your brother? Spoiler, no. But they can try. At first, I thought the whole thing was just some half-baked attempt to guilt-trip me. A threat. Maybe they'd hope I'd cave and write Ethan a check just to avoid embarrassment. But no. They'd really filed something. They were accusing me of, well, interference. And the name on the paperwork? My grandfather's. Suddenly it made sense. Grandpa Joe. My dad's dad. The only person in the family who ever treated me like a human being and not just the spare child. He died 2 years ago. We weren't close in the traditional sense, but when he was around, he saw me. Asked about school. Slipped me $20 with a wink when no one was looking. Apparently, he'd left behind a small estate. Nothing massive, just a few bonds, a car, and some old property out in rural Ohio. But the kicker? My parents believed I manipulated Grandpa into leaving the bulk of it to me, and not Ethan. This was news to me. I hadn't even known there was a will. I hadn't touched anything. But now they were accusing me of fraud. Fraud. Like I photoshopped a will on my lunch break. I was mid-scroll through their accusations, terms like undue influence and emotional manipulation, tossed around like popcorn, when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost didn't pick up. Then I did. Darren speaking. A familiar voice answered. Calm, confident. Slightly amused. Wow. Look at you. Homeowner and defendant. Moving up in the world. I blinked. Kyle? Kyle Ramos. My college friend from programming school. We'd lost touch after graduation when he decided not to go into tech. Last I heard, he'd said, I like logic, but I hate bugs, and pivoted to law school. Apparently, he'd followed through. Let me guess, I said, already smiling. You're calling because of a totally normal and not at all ridiculous case filed by two very grounded individuals? He laughed. Your parents? Yeah. Their lawyer's a guy who once tried to sue an HOA for bad vibes. You're fine. Wait, how do you even know about this? I clerk in the same circuit. One of the case clerks flagged it. Saw your name. Called me immediately. You're kidding. Nope. And also, I'm the presiding judge. Silence. Kyle. Please tell me you're joking. I'm very much not. You'll be in my courtroom next Thursday. Thought I'd give you a heads up so you don't walk in and faint. I buried my face in my hand. Oh my God! This is insane. I've seen insane, Darren. This is amateur hour. You're good. But here's the deal. I obviously can't rule with bias, but I can tell you this, your parents have no case. And if they try to push this narrative in front of a courtroom, they're going to embarrass themselves. I paused. They're really trying to sue me because Ethan can't function? Not just that. They also claimed emotional distress. Apparently your Facebook post mocked his lack of achievement. I snorted. I didn't even mention him. You smiled in the photo. That was triggering, apparently. I almost dropped the phone laughing. Kyle cleared his throat. Look. All jokes aside, this is petty. But you'll need to show up. Keep it clean. Let me run it. And I'll shut it down. I exhaled for what felt like the first time all day. Thank you, man. Seriously. One more thing. He said. They listed Susie as shared property. I blinked. The cat? Yeah. Apparently, she's now emotional support for your brother. He sold her couch. Kyle chuckled. I thought that was you being dramatic online. No. The actual couch. Well then, he said, this just got personal. Courtroom drama on TV? It's all objections, gasps, and people storming out. Real life? Slightly different vibe. There was no gavel slam when I walked into the courtroom that Thursday, just the dull hum of fluorescent lights, a clerk yawning behind a desk, and Ethan, wearing sunglasses indoors. You serious? I muttered under my breath as I passed him. He leaned back dramatically like he was in some gritty indie film and muttered, You ruined my life. Buddy, you pawned the microwave. I replied. My parents were seated on the plaintiff's side, looking like they were preparing for a production of Les Miserables. Mom had a tissue already in hand. Dad was dressed in the suit he only wore to funerals and, apparently, petty lawsuits. And then there was Kyle. Judge Ramos. Up on the bench in his robe, adjusting his glasses and doing a frankly Oscar-worthy job of pretending he'd never seen me stress-eat vending machine pretzels at 3 a.m. during finals. He glanced at the paperwork, cleared his throat, and said, Case number 24 CV 1987, Ramos vs. Ramos. Allegations include will interference, financial sabotage, and emotional distress. Also, shared feline custody. You could hear the eye twitch in his voice. My lawyer, a cool-headed woman named Dara I'd hired just for the optics, stood up and said calmly, Your Honor, the defense is prepared to proceed. Kyle nodded. Plaintiff's opening statement? My dad stood. No lawyer. No notes. Just sheer, uncut audacity. He started with a speech about family unity, followed by a dramatic retelling of how I'd allegedly hoarded wealth, and shut Ethan out of a future he deserved. Then he pivoted, hard, into the will stuff. He convinced my father to change the will. Dad barked, wagging a finger like I'd hypnotized Grandpa with a calculator and a free t-shirt. Kyle listened, expression neutral. Then came my mom, who cried, literally sobbed, about how Darren's smile on Facebook was a slap in the face to the entire family. The courtroom was dead silent. Even the stenographer looked like she wanted to evaporate into her keyboard. Then Ethan stood, pulled off his sunglasses, and said, I just think, family should support each other, you know? That was it. That was the statement. Kyle raised a brow. Anything else? No. But also, Susie misses me. I almost laughed. My lawyer calmly stood and began unraveling everything. She presented emails from the estate lawyer confirming I hadn't even known about the will. She played a voicemail from Grandpa Joe saying, verbatim, Don't tell those vultures what I left you. The court chuckled. Then, the piece de resistance, a printed Facebook post where Ethan bragged about betting $500 on a YouTuber boxing match. He's emotionally distressed, Dara said flatly. Because he lost his bet. Cal leaned back. Mr. Ramos, Jr., do you have a gambling issue? Ethan blinked. What counts as gambling? I buried my face in my hands. Cal cleared his throat. All right. I've heard enough. He looked down at the paperwork. Then up at my parents. With all due respect. This is the most ridiculous misuse of court time I've seen in years. Mom gasped. This case is dismissed. Immediately. No evidence of will interference. No proof of sabotage. No legal grounds for emotional damage. And as for the cat. He looked at me. Smiled. Susie remains with the defendant. Frankly, I trust Aaron to feed her and not sell the furniture out from under her. Mic drop. I didn't say anything as I left the courtroom. I didn't gloat. Didn't smile. I just walked out into the parking lot, let the sun hit my face, and finally, breathed. Ethan stormed past me, muttering something about rigged systems and fake judges. Sure, man. Blame the system. Not the empty bag of chips you are. I got home that night, dropped my keys on the counter, and found Susie curled up on her new couch, a real one. Soft, gray, and completely hers. She blinked at me. Yawned. Rolled over. Yeah, girl. We earned this. So take the job. Save the money. Build a life. And when they come back with guilt in one hand and expectations in the other? Just smile, close the door, and get back to your peace. Because once you've built something on your own, they don't get to tear it down with guilt. Not this time. Not ever again.